Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's LES webinar, Bolted On or Built In, Is Your TTO Using AI to Its Fullest Potential? You are encouraged to ask questions by using the Q&A feature in Zoom. Today's webinar is being recorded. If you aren't already an LES member, we hope you consider joining today. There are many benefits to becoming a member, including free access to both live and on-demand webinars and free access to all the LES Global Deal Terms and Royalty Rates surveys, including the recently released 2022 Physical Science Survey and the 2024 Life Sciences Survey. We offer many different membership categories so that you can find the right one for you or your organization. We recently switched to a rolling expiration date for new memberships, so your membership expires 1 year from your join date. If you have any questions about membership, please contact membership@les.org. LES also offers many levels of educational courses that you can attend either in person or virtually. Be sure to get involved in the many opportunities that LES offers, including sectors, committees, and your local chapter. Registration is now open for the 2026 annual meeting taking place October 18th to the 21st in San Diego. You can register at les2026.org. Now I'd like to introduce our moderator for today, Joe Fiore, Executive Vice President at TradeSpace.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for that warm introduction. As mentioned, I am Joe Fiore, the Executive Vice President at TradeSpace. But before that, I was the Vice President at a tech transfer office at the Medical University of South Carolina, and additionally taught AI and entrepreneurship at the College of Charleston. So I only say that to let you all know that I do have some skin in the game from a few different angles. With that being said, I want to get into a little bit of quick housekeeping. We will have a Q&A at the end, so drop your questions in the chats, and as we go, I'll pull them in. We will get to those at the close or just near the close of the session. Again, the session is being recorded, and we'll send a follow-up resource after. So let's get into it. Before we frame the topic, I wanted to briefly hear from our panelists, make sure everybody is comfortable with who they are. And so I'll go in a little bit of an order. We have Priya, Alicia, and Jennifer. So if we could start with Priya, if you could tell us your name, organization, and possibly one thing you're genuinely excited to talk about today. So please kick us off.
Hi, my name is Priya Cloutier. I'm with University of California, San Diego. But my lawyers tell me that I'm supposed to tell you that nothing I say today is representative of the University of California or the Regents of the University of California or UCSD for that matter. So I'll put that out front. And I'm excited to talk about AI in general. I think it's changing the way we work and it's changing certainly the things that we do, the way we do things at UCSD.
Wonderful. Next up, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
No, I apologize. I'm Alicia Muth. I'm the Strategic Partnerships and Ventures Manager at the Gladstone Institutes, which is an independent nonprofit biomedical institute. It has about 33 labs and 600 people. And what I'm excited to talk about today is the small shop perspective. So, how we are thinking about moving from bolting on AI to do work faster to actually building it in and what that looks like for us. Thank you.
Wonderful. And last but not least.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Souter. I'm managing our tech transfer office here at the Texas Tech University system. We're system serving and serve 5 different component institutions within the TTUS system. I may use the same disclosure that Priya mentioned, but I'm also an LES board member as well. And excited today, as everyone has mentioned, I mean, AI is certainly all-encompassing. We've really started in a very traditional model here at Tech with high quality, resource intensive assessments. And what we're really looking for AI is to not just help move our work faster, but also fundamentally help change how we're making decisions at scale.
Wonderful. Thank you for all of those great introductions. And here's how I'd like to frame and hold for the hour. So by now, most offices have pointed AI at an existing task, and that's just fine. But that's not the question. The question for today is whether you're adapting AI to fit your current workflow or actually evolving the workflow around what AI newly makes possible. But here's the trap. A poorly designed process doesn't improve when you speed it up. It just produces the same result just a little bit faster. And if you only measure time saved on an existing task, the bigger opportunity stays kind of invisible. So that's the distinction today and the title, bolted on versus built in. So we're going to start with a poll. We want to get a pulse for um, how the audience is feeling. So let's start very general at the top. As you can see, how is your office using AI today? So let's take a second and allow everyone to weigh in. Excellent. And I'm not seeing visibility of the results. If someone could send those to me in the background, that would be helpful to get us moving. There we go. And this is interesting for those of you following along. It looks like everyone's weighing in pretty quickly. Leading the charge is experimenting and demoing tools, um, closely followed behind by one or more point solutions in production. So that actually sets us up perfectly for the um, the first section in this discussion. We're going to call that segment one, speed versus new capability. And as you all can read, are you doing things faster or actually doing things differently? And that's going to be the topic here. So with that being said, I want to pose this question to everyone, but we'll lead with Priya and start there. So
Yeah.
most offices, welcome, by the way, and most offices start with what I'm going to call the non-sexy work. It's outreach lists, market landscape, first pass research, for example. It's a good starting point. But what's the tell that an office has stopped right there, that they've automated tasks without actually changing the work?
I think if you automate tasks without actually thinking about the workflow and how you're going to incorporate it in what you're doing, you may not get the results that you are anticipating. You may be collecting data that isn't relevant. You may not have the right person to supervise AI, right? Like AI is great, but it always needs adult supervision. So you may not have the right adult at the right place and the right time.
That's a great point. And I think it's an overarching statement that I say quite often is it's a tool. All too many times I think we or individuals think that it's taking over and you just let it run and it does everything. But it's a tool that does need to be supervised. So you make a great point. Alicia, do you have anything that you might add there?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So for us, it was a matter of we noticed we were doing things faster. So that's where we were maybe using AI for like small parts of market landscaping or thinking about an outreach list. So we decided to stop and ask the question, are we just doing things faster or are we doing things differently? And I think that's the crux of, the transition from using AI from bolting on to building in. And I would say that we're at a point of starting to think more about the workflow, the mapping, where AI is touching things and where AI is not touching things, and moving more so from the day-to-day tasks to looking at the bigger picture. So faster versus how are we actually changing our work?
Those are incredible points. And I'd also put in there the word better maybe being used synonymously because faster definitely doesn't mean better. And so we're in a new world. I'm almost calling it the Industrial Revolution when I'm teaching the topic because I don't think we know what we don't know. And you both bring up great points that supervision is important here. I think we're going to have to find out really quickly what is working, how do we use these tools, and to what extent. So you both bring up excellent points. Staying with Alicia and Priya, I'd like to jump into question number two in this section. And that is when AI lets an office do something it literally never did before, again, not faster, but new, how does that change the decision downstream? So, for example, what are you protecting? How are you drafting? What are the deals you can even pursue? So, if either one of you want to jump in and start talking about that topic, it would be helpful.
Um, I,
Well,
sorry,
go
Priya.
ahead.
Why
You
don't we
can.
start with Priya? We'll start with Priya.
Yeah, it's interesting. I spent 28 years in private practice, working with startups. And the first thing I always told my startup to do is to do a white space search or to do a landscape study. And when I came in-house, I was shocked that we were not doing that, before we send out to draft patent applications. So bringing AI in is going to allow me to do that and do that at scale. I don't have to make decisions about which technology, decisions or predictions about which technologies are going to be licensed in the future. I can do that work for pretty much every single disclosure that's coming in. So I think that's going to help us get better patent claims issued, and I think that's going to help us do better deals.
Yeah, just to add on to Priya's point about evaluating the discoveries, this is where we heavily rely on trade space, and it's allowed us to have a better workflow. So, as part of the trade space platform, there's a tool that's an IP assessment, which to some degree is a white space analysis. It looks at the competitors, it looks at the market size, um, and a handful of other things. But this has allowed us to take every disclosure that we get, run an IP assessment. Everything gets treated equal, so it's a standardized process. And then we use that with leadership to make decisions in combination with, other personal factors like what is the scientist's interest? Do they plan on forming a new co? Have they talked to anybody that's interested in licensing this technology? So I think that's a good example of how human and AI come together to make those filing decisions on the front end. And so once we've decided to actually protect something, then the deal making comes into play. So for our scientists in particular, oftentimes, they'll make a discovery, and it's going to go typically one of two ways. Like it'll go down the licensing path to a third party, or oftentimes at Gladstone, the scientist is interested in forming a new company. And so for the licensing side, where AI comes into play, and this is a workflow change, is that we move straight from the IP assessment and the disclosure. We're able to create the opportunity and trade space. From there, we can look at suggested partners, see why they're a fit, how they're a fit, do some basic due diligence, like on their financial status. Have they been partnering lately? And then we get a really targeted list that we can reach out to. And we're using, other AI tools in combination with this to do some drafting and tracking of the email marketing campaigns. But ultimately, I think this is creating a much more targeted list and increasing our hit rate. So that's one component. The second component is the new company formation, the spinouts from the Gladstone Institutes. And AI has been pivotal here too. So we've built tools that use multiple agents, skills, so on and so forth to do competitive and market analysis that's targeted at new co-formation, pitch deck formation. So that's one example. We're able to use TradeSpace AI and other AI tools to find and vet venture capitalist partners as well. So we can create a targeted list that way. But those are just high level examples of how we're using AI and humans in conjunction to push those two workflows.
Those are incredible examples. And one word, two words that come to mind immediately is customer discovery. And I think all too many times tech transfer offices and inventors specifically, they miss that. And it's so important. These incredible inventors are so great at creating these things that are helping the world, but I don't think they ever think about, well, who's going to buy it? How much? What does the market landscape kind of look like? And where I think AI can now make a tech transfer office more valuable to its institution is it helps these tech transfer offices to not just be patent pushers. Now you're bringing true value to your institution. You're going to your institution and saying, we're not just filing patents, we're doing market evaluation, we're supporting these inventors. And Alicia, as you had said, I think every tech transfer office has those two paths of you can either go startup or license. Those are two very different places to go. And if you're not starting at, you might be starting at the same place, but you very quickly start going in two different directions. And being able to give these inventors that data up front to say, here's what one avenue might look like over the other. Now you've become an actual asset to the institution and the inventor. So thank you both for weighing in there. Um, Moving on to the last question in this section, I'm going to give it directly to Jennifer. And the question is, if time saved is the only metric that an office tracks, it'll probably only optimize the tasks that it already has. So from where you sit, running a multi-institutional system, what's a better question for whether AI has actually changed how the office works?
Yeah, thank you. I think for us, a better question is really, are we making better decisions earlier and across more of our portfolio? So not just the initial subset of disclosures. And so while time saved is extraordinarily helpful, alongside increasing operational efficiency, the real value for us comes also with enhanced customer service that we're providing to our stakeholders. Also, the expanded support that we can offer beyond our inventor base to our student and community partners that may be engaged in our accelerator programs, for instance. And Alicia just mentioned some of that in terms of the startups. But also our ability to prioritize and direct investment and bandwidth towards higher level IP. So using it as a tool to prioritize our portfolio. Everyone has limited budgets, so we need to really make sure we're making strategic decisions in terms of where our investments go. So we not only want to speed things up, but improve our overall decision quality. And again, that customer support that we're offering to our inventor base. So, the biggest shift for us as we begin to implement these tools is that we really envision moving away from selective insight on that initial disclosure activity to portfolio wide visibility and really leveraging the AI tools for initial triage, but also to ongoing IP assessment throughout the invention and patenting lifecycle from disclosure all the way through maintenance and following that ultimately commercialization.
Yep. Yes. Very, very well said. And commercialization, I think, is becoming the word. Most tech transfer offices are becoming a commercialization office, and it's on the back of AI in conjunction with your key opinion leaders and these startup hubs and everything that now our world is turning into. So well said. Um, so before we go any deeper on redesign, I wanted to start taking one more pulse check. And this is going to be into poll number 2. So if we can throw that up on the screen, when you picture AI working well in your office, you're mostly imagining what? And let's see what the audience has to say.
Okay, hold on. I'm working on it. Sorry.
No problem.
Keeps pulling up the first poll, so I've got to go back in. Here we go.
We'll give everybody a minute to make their choice. Just waiting for the results to pop up on my screen. I'm actually curious myself as to where this lands. There we go. Results are in, and the option making better decisions with better information is leading the way with 45% of the vote. Um, and I really like that because making decisions is actually what our offices are all about. And so that gap between where people are and where they want to be, that's actually exactly what the next segment is about. So if we jump into the next segment, which is redesigning the work, you'll see on the screen, what does real redesign look like and why is it harder than it sounds? So we're going to kick off this section. We're going to go through 3 questions. The first question, again, I want to start with Priya and then have Alicia jump in, and this is process-based. So let's get into the mechanics. The offices that actually get value treat this as process architecture. So mapping where human judgment sits, who's accountable, and putting in the guardrails that keep things from going sideways. In IP specifically, that means keeping one invention's information from bleeding into the other. So starting with Priya, what does that design work look like? And what's the hardest part of making the case internally?
Well, I think I am lucky. The internal case is easy to make, right? Look, we get about 500 disclosures a year. We file on about 80% of those as provisionals, and we convert about 98% of those. So we have a lot of volume. The question is, and we have a small team. So the question is, how do we do this and set this what does the AI look and how do we set it on our current process flow, or do we create a process flow around this, right? So let me give you an example of a new process flow we're working on is we're bringing in-house some drafting, patent drafting AI. And normally we have a business manager look at this, and then we send it out to council. And now I think we're going to do that differently. So, really thinking about where the AI is going to fit. Does it fit under the current process? Then, if it doesn't fit under the current process, what does the new process look like? And then who's in charge of that process, right? And I think I spoke about this earlier, which is AI needs adult supervision. So, where are the points that I'm going to drop adult supervision into?
Well put. Alicia.
Yeah, so building on what Priya said, we are looking at our current workflows. And I think for us, a first step, and it's been part of the learning curve, is understanding which part of that workflow we can change. So I mentioned the IP assessment earlier. That's an example of something that we can change. And so we started there. And then that starts getting built into the whole overall workflow. So I would say step one is bolting on. Step two is building in. So we have the invention disclosures that go through, we do the IP assessment. Because Gladstone is smaller, we have about 33 labs, as I mentioned. We have a really close relationship with our scientists, and there's a big human element in that where we have a lot of back and forth and discussion around the invention. So I don't think that's ever going to change. I think there's incredible value in that for us, and we're lucky that we can do that. But then after those conversations, we go down those two paths, as I mentioned. And we'll talk about the licensing path for this example. So what we're able to do now from a process standpoint is take kind of a cumbersome process that we were using before, where we would have to draft the opportunity pages, push them out manually, pick people that we know at certain companies, and hope that they're maybe read their annual reports to see what their priorities are for the year. But our team made the smart decision before I actually joined the team to use TradeSpace. And so we're using that as a whole new workflow, allowing us to go from the invention to the marketing. And as I mentioned, I sit in the marketing and commercialization realm. And so we're able to, look at the targeted partner list, tailor our messaging, tailor our follow-up, and then bring the human element in when we have the leads to have those conversations that, are either non-confidential at first or confidential at first, with the ultimate goal of resulting in a licensing deal. And just from another perspective, our team has developed playbooks and template agreements. So we're thinking about how we can leverage AI in the licensing agreement negotiation piece. And to Priya's point about adult supervision, yes, you definitely have to have guardrails. And I think that was one of the biggest pieces that our team looked at when they were looking at TradeSpace and any other AI tools, is ensuring that we're vetting the companies, the technologies in a way that will not create contamination across disclosures or any other potential issues. But sometimes the hardest part of everything is like the old adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So getting people to move along the path to, see what AI can offer, and then you can decide if you like it as part of the workflow or not.
Well said again. And staying on that topic of people, I'm going to jump into our second question in this section, and I'm going to pose it to Jennifer. Um, and again, it's about people. So when AI absorbs triage, so that first pass review, market research, all those things at the front, the scarce value of the office becomes judgment and relationships. So does that change who you hire and where the team spends its time? And does the team feel like is it a gain or is it a threat? So Jennifer, if you could weigh in on that.
Thanks. I think as AI takes on things like that initial triage, the market intelligence, patentability, et cetera, our team's value really shifts towards higher level tasks. They're able to still work and qualify and interpret the outputs that are being generated by the AI. They continue to advise and engage our inventors for feedback on that. And ultimately, again, making the strategic IP and licensing decisions. So again, that higher level activity, as Alicia was saying, it helps us accelerate our targeted marketing and industry outreach. So rather than spending a lot of time creating those dossiers, creating the prospects list, we just need to qualify and make sure it validates that it's correct, and then we can get straight to it. So that helps us, understand if there's going to be industry interest in technologies that we maybe filed a provisional on, so that we can make that decision quicker on whether we invest further to convert it. So I don't think we see it as a reduction rather than a shift to those higher level activities. I think we all agree that the shift in implementation of AI in our day to day will certainly require careful consideration. We're just in the starting processes of adopting some of these tools, but I think it's still going to require that overall workflow touch points from our team. But also, I think inventor perception and buy-in. I think that's one thing we're very concerned about as we bring in new tools. How do we roll them out? How do we pilot it maybe with a subset of inventors to make sure we're rolling it out in the best way possible so that we do get that buy-in? And there's also internal policies that we need to consider, gaps that exist along those, and how we're using it across our team. So how do we standardize it? How do we give out best practice guidance to our inventors, to our team members? And again, just the guidance for its use. I think all that's important as we're considering really implementing more of it here internally at Tech.
Wonderful. And in our pre-conversations, Alicia, I know you had a couple comments related to feeling like almost like a coder in some cases. Would you mind speaking to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned before, we're shifting from more so just, you know, making certain tasks more efficient to thinking about how to piece things together. And the thing that I have really enjoyed about AI in general is that your imagination is the limit. So I don't know if I can quite call myself a vibe coder, but it allows me to think of ideas or to fill gaps that we have and use plain language to solve those problems and build tools. So adding on to what Jennifer said, it's kind of like an intellectual promotion to some degree. Like we're not pushing the work, we get to sit back, assess, and think about how we can expand or go into whole different areas that we hadn't thought about before. So really about building capabilities in plain English.
Very well said. And that kind of leads into my third question that I'm going to pose to Jennifer and then Priya, and it's revolving around your technology stack. Most offices end up with disconnected tools, so that creates friction. And so, Jennifer, I wanted to know when your tools are they creating more work than they remove? And a related challenge to you on that is now let's say your funnel at the top is 10x. Where does that now move your bottleneck? I know in my experience in tech transfer, the bottleneck started right at the top. There was just too much coming in to ever get to. And now with AI, we can get to so much more. So if you wouldn't mind weighing in on that.
Sure. I think we're generally very conscious about just not adding tools. And it's something certainly we need to consider so there's not duplication of effort, data entry issues, creating more work for our team members than not. So right now we're using Copilot, the enterprise version, for summaries, market content, prospect identification, and so on. And starting to use it a little bit with prosecution related analysis. We also use patent search tools for those deeper dives into the landscape and corporate intelligence. And we are moving towards that AI assessment platform as that initial triage later. But we do use Wellspring, for instance, as our CRM and also online portal for invention disclosures. So, I think many tech transfer offices are trying to figure out how do we integrate everything into one, or how do you use two and do it effectively where you're not duplicating efforts. So again, I think it goes back to how are we rolling this out? How are we really thinking about our overall workflow and where do each of these components fit into it and complement each other rather than, again, duplicating effort and creating more friction. So I think the next steps as we move forward to adopting these platforms and processes is really making sure that they're not disconnected and thinking about how we're not duplicating effort. So the risk, is creating more friction and work for our team instead of less. And that's what we certainly want to avoid. And I think in terms of the funnel, I mean, certainly the funnel of it's going to help us file things quicker, help us make decisions quicker. But then what do we do with those things? So I think, you don't want the bottleneck to then become how do you then do your outreach? How do you then progress licenses? So I think, again, thinking of the whole workflow, we have to figure out how are we devoting more of our time to maybe some of those downstream activities when we have this great tool at the front that can help us, get to that point quicker.
Understood. And Priya, I know from our pre-conversation, there was a concern about mixing confidential invention data and the governance angle. Would you mind speaking to that point?
Yeah, so this idea of the different softwares that are available to us, the different agents that are available to us within our tech transfer office, we can set a workflow, and we can set some guidelines. The more difficult part becomes to control our inventors, and we do have Copilot. I think we use Copilot internally at UCSD. However, if I have an inventor that puts in some portion of his disclosure there, and there are no guardrails set by tech transfer, then that AI is going to go out and search the world. And of course, you know that the courts have held fairly steadily that inventions made by AI are not patentable, and certainly in the copyright space is not copyrightable, right? So um, that's the disconnect, right? So how do I bring all of that stuff together in one place? Right now, I'm using a really clunky and human method to do that, which is I simply ask the question, which also gets me some quite interesting results. So, it's really interesting. And I want to echo something that Jennifer said as well, is because we are using different pieces. And ideally, I'd like to have an API that plugs all of these pieces together. Um, that's that's my want for anyone out in the world who is listening. But I do think, again, what Jennifer and Ellis has said was it allows us to be more thoughtful about what we are doing.
You make a good point, and I think we're already coming full circle in our world with humans coming back to the human. And I think we always want to overcomplicate things. And just going right back to where we started was maybe I'll just try this on my own to start. And I don't think that's a bad thing. And I can't wait to see what the next few years hold to see where we land in all of this. Um, Keeping things moving along, I want to jump into the final poll that we have for the audience. And you'll see on your screen a very simple question. And I'm actually curious, what's the biggest thing holding your office back right now? And so we'll give everybody a few seconds to weigh in and love to see what the results are. And to just give a little foreshadowing, the last segment is actually about what becomes possible once you get past blockers. All right, they should be coming in any second. And there we are. And this is over 45% of you have responded with data, security, and policy concerns. And that's fair enough. I could absolutely relate to that. So as we jump into the last section, which we are titling Efficiency to Strategy, the question of the day is when AI is truly built in, what can you do that you couldn't do before? And this is an overarching segment, so I think we'll be able to touch on a lot of points. I'm going to start with the first question in this segment to Priya and then Alicia. And I'm going to start with the question to Priya. AI changes the economics of attention. So you no longer have to triage down to just a handful of disclosures. We now have the capacity to analyze deeply. So now if you can evaluate everything, what changes? What do you protect? How do you market? How does the office now set its strategy?
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, it's fascinating because you got to weigh a couple of things here, right? Which is if I have a disclosure in the oldie timey ways, right? If I have a disclosure, probably everything about that disclosure is going to stay with the same group of people, right? So on the prosecution end, I file a patent application on the prosecution end. um, you know, I have certain commitments to the USPTO that I have to give, right? I have to. So now let's go to the AI field. Now, if I have knowledge about everything, right, and that knowledge is mixed, then I have the opportunity to fail at giving a disclosure to the USPTO that I would have given, right? It's a risk, right? So it's a balance of how much information do we need to know and who actually needs to know it. Um, and so I think I answered your question. What can you do? What can what is it that you can do now that you couldn't do in the oldie timey days, right? Which is, wow, we can get, we could commercialize in a way that we never understood commercialization, right? We can get data, we can get information, we can do better deals on the IP side, we can get better patents, we can think about copyright, we can do all of that stuff and we can do it quickly. I mean, that's the exciting part of it is that we have a lot of big data. We can look at it and we can make better decisions with AI. In the oldie timey days, we had big data, but we couldn't look at it. But it also protected us from stepping on some legal landmines that we now have to be more cautious about.
You bring up a great point, and I think what it also does is allow tech transfer offices, and I got to say this carefully, but focus on those opportunities now that probably have the best opportunity to be successful. We're not going to spin our wheels in something that we're kind of guessing and saying maybe this will work, and we spend an exorbitant amount of time, money, and effort to try and get it out there and realize halfway down the process, oh, this was probably not a good use of our time. And so with all this data, we can quickly be like, yes, no, yes, no. Maybe not that clean cut, but you hope so. Alicia, do you want to weigh in on this topic?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Priya and Joe, you bring up good points, the risks and the upsides, and then there's probably a gray area, right? Which maybe that's where the human element sits. But I'll speak more so to the commercialization side. So, what I'm excited about is, and some opportunities that I think are opening up and the deepest shifts for us is that we're able to bring multiple data sets together that we weren't necessarily able to bring together before. So, for example, the one of the currencies of academic biomedical research is publications and academia, period, right? So you have that piece of information. You have all the 10Ks in the SEC. You have a bunch of information about the venture funds. And there's tons of other information that I'm not including, your IP portfolio as well. But thinking about how to use AI to bring those pieces together to even more so map to your pre-IP projects that could open up sponsored research opportunities in different areas like that. So I think that that is one of the deepest shifts, as well as being able to look at everything, decide what to move to commercialization, and involving AI in this process goes back to the vibe coder and allowing someone to build things like that in plain language, and then creating more time to think strategically about that sort of stuff. So those are kind of the economics, or that's what I think about when I think about the economics of attention and how we can use our brain power in different ways that we weren't necessarily able to use it before.
I agree. I agree. I'm going to pose the second question in this segment to Jennifer, and then I'll open it up to Priya and Alicia if you guys want to weigh in. But there's two things that most offices haven't touched yet. And first is using AI at the front of that funnel, as we were talking about. Coming from the world, sometimes what that does is surface inventions that didn't get disclosed or got disclosed by mistake, which we know sometimes our inventors do, and they don't mean any harm. They start talking about it or posting about it, and now all of a sudden our office is scrambling to protect the idea. So that's one part of it. The second is the access question. AI potentially gives a small office the capabilities of what a large office used to be able to do with counsel. So Jennifer, what's the biggest upside with all of that, and where's the biggest risks? Is it inventorship, AI authored disclosures, defensibility? Would you mind speaking on any of that?
Think, I mean, AI certainly is going to enhance our office's capabilities, but there are those risks that come with it. I see some of our patent counsel on this call, so I assure them we're not moving away from using our outside patent counsel for things, but I think it enhances what we can do on the front end, and it really helps us, as others were saying earlier, provide better information to our counsel to draft the best patent application. And some of the tools, as you mentioned, create a really easy process for our inventors to disclose. That leads to things that may not have been. So this maybe a pre-disclosure, maybe our forms are too complex. So they want something easy that they can help craft their disclosure by just putting in a few bits of what they're thinking. But I do think that comes with a risk about inventorship. If they're putting things into chat GPT or doing otherwise to create things, there's disclosure integrity issues as Priya was mentioning. So there's certainly upsides to making it easier, but also some risks. And again, that I think that goes back to what is our process? How are we rolling this out? What's our guidance we're putting out? What are some best practices? I think also with the faster triage and the inventor feedback and engagement, this also comes with some risk in terms of becoming over reliant on those early AI outputs and not having enough quality control. So again, back to the guardrails is they're still going to require that human touch. We're still going to have our licensing and IP team, looking at that material and validating it. And I think the broader portfolio coverage, I mean, certainly being able to identify additional use cases, that may not have been top of mind of our inventors, has the potential to expand the market and commercialization of potential. Our inventors are very honed in on one thing, but if we're able to actually uncover other use cases that they've not thought of, it might help guide those next steps in their research, but also expand our patent protection. So for us, it's really about using AI as a decision support tool and not decision replacement.
Alicia, Priya, any other additional thoughts on that?
I completely agree with you. From the front end of the funnel, we operate a little bit differently because we're a small shop, as I mentioned. So we do meet with every single investigator at least once a year, oftentimes far more than that. So we're getting those touch points, which I think helps with some of the issues that you raised. But I 100% echo a decision support tool and that the human eye and thought process is critical.
Well said. I'm going to pose the last question in this segment, and actually the last question for the panel overall to everyone. And we can go Alicia, Priya, then Jennifer. The last question is, let's be specific. So not an intention, but an actual action. If an office can do exactly one thing in the next 30 days, what should it be? So again, let's start with Alicia on that.
Yeah, I would say if you haven't touched AI, if you're questioning AI, pick one task that you do, whether it's pulling a contact list. You don't have to worry about confidential information or anything like that. And have AI do it for you, then test the output, see what you think of it. You may need to adjust your prompt or some of the input you're providing. It also can be an iterative process, but just do one thing and see how it feels. And if that one thing feels like it's saving you time, maybe try another thing and you've then saved yourself time. And then I think that will eventually evolve into looking at your workflow. And for me, it's the marketing and commercialization process and how I build that in. But first thing is just automate something simple.
That's a great piece of advice. Priya.
I think what I would suggest is think about where your pain points are. So for us, our pain points were, you know, what is the data to find licensees, right? What is that data? Who are those people? I think that was a pain point in marketing, sending information out to the world so folks could find us. That was a pain point. In the startup world, because we also, I suspect most tech transfer offices, I think Jennifer said this, have the licensees the inventor startup, and then we have other entrepreneurial things go on, right? So how to get that information to them. So that was a pain point for us. Um, on the prosecution, on the legal side, and that's the side that I sit on, definitely was a pain point that we just have a lot of disclosures, and how do we make decisions on them? When we draft patents, as I think Joe, you said earlier, sometimes we're filing something in 24 hours, right? So how do we give the best information we have so that we can get the best outcomes on the legal side? So I think my piece of advice is find where your pain points are and see where automation or AI can help you in those spaces.
And Jennifer.
Yeah, along very much the same lines, I would almost challenge you to pick something that's actually maybe more complex than simple. And actually, one of the things that we've started doing, I mentioned earlier, was looking at office actions. How do we get better input from our inventor to strengthen those? So how do we adapt AI tools to actually analyze those actions, direct our inventors to the key points that they need to address and actually prompt questions to them that will help strengthen their response. Often when an inventor looks at one of those documents, they have they don't know where to start. So I think we've started trying to look at how do we create agents or prompts to do that. So I think that to me, something more challenging or complex will really give you, I think, a good insight of how it's helping your inventors, but also how it can really help you above and beyond kind of a really true day to day.
I think another good piece of advice that I've given some companies I've consulted for is draw out your process map. What does it look like from when the patent comes in till the time it goes out? And once you do that, you're going to find the points where you're having the most pain. Those are the areas where you might want to insert an AI function. And so that's a good natural way to figure out where would we use AI? Well, look at your process map and where is your hardest point to get through. And that's usually a good place to start. And you can just maybe attack that one first barrier that you get to. So just a piece of advice, but it actually leads to a great setup for our final takeaways. And so I'm going to go back to each panelist, 60 seconds max, and then we're going to go into question and answer. Start with Priya, then we'll go to Alicia, and then back to Jennifer. Um, I want to give each panelist a moment for their single most important takeaway, the thing that you want someone to leave with today. So again, we'll have Priya start us off and let's hear from you.
Don't be afraid of AI.
I love
Don't be
that.
afraid. It is not scary. Go play with it. The folks that I work with, some were very afraid that AI was going to take their job, and because they didn't understand it, right? And didn't understand how it can be useful. So I think my biggest takeaway would be don't be afraid. It's not going to break anything. You're not going to break anything. No one will get harmed or injured. Go out and play and let your imagination run wild.
Love that. Alicia.
I totally agree, Priya. Don't be afraid. Totally. That is critical. And when thinking about AI, evolve from thinking about time saved to thinking about what doors it opens and what you can do that you previously couldn't do. And for lean teams, which it sounds like everybody's running a lean team, kind of levels the playing field and it allows us to do more. From the invention disclosure all the way to the marketing and the partnering. So, yeah, don't be afraid. Just do it. I echo Priya.
And last but not least, Jennifer.
Yeah, I may echo both Priya and Alicia, but I was going to say, I think there's this fear that AI is going to replace our profession and others, but I don't think that's the case. I mean, we're relationship people. We have a lot of relationships to manage, but I think it will dramatically amplify those that use it and those that know how to effectively use it. So I would encourage, again, use it, but learn how to effectively use it to the most potential.
Wonderful. With that being said, we are going to move into question and answer. We are right on schedule. We'll take 5 minutes for question and answer. And then the last 5 minutes, I believe there's a little bit of wrap up from our gracious host, LES. So I want to start with one of the questions that came in early on. How do you use AI agents on confidential data or information without risking leakage. And I can start us off there, and maybe everyone else can weigh in. Having taught the topic, this is something that I actually focused quite a bit on. And it gets a little bit into the back end of AI. You're able to create closed loop AI instances. So when you are using ChatGPT, let's just use one of the names, you can tell it, do not train your model with our information. And depending on your subscription level, you can create a closed loop, meaning that whatever is going on in your world, it's only training itself in that world and not getting out into the public so that you're not risking disclosure to the public and that it's not searchable. So at its very highest level, that's how you would begin, is with those two pieces of information. But I'd be curious to hear if the panel has anything else on that topic.
So when we were, when we were out in the marketplace looking for AI solutions, that was one of the things that I was looking for, were the closed loop solutions. I think within the tech transfer office, that is easy to enforce because it is what it is, right? What I bring in is what it is. I think the more difficult enforcement is to our PIs and what they are using. So really, as a matter of going out and educating the PIs, the labs, the graduate students at UCSD. In fact, we are now working on a AI policy and teaching standard, right? So I think that becomes very important here.
I'll echo Priya's comments. I mean, I think what we've seen is very inconsistent policy guidance, across institutions. And there's a lot of guidance given towards the teaching and education aspect, but not a lot as it relates to research and innovation. And so I think you're right, Priya. Like, how should faculty be using these tools? What tools should they be using? What tools should they not be using? We get disclosures all the time that you can tell they were written by AI. So it's like, what did you use? And a lot of times people deny it. It's like, well, there's clearly something here. So we don't want to prohibit people from using them or discourage it, but want to make sure they're using the right ones and in the right way so that we're not kind of creating any damage down the road.
I agree with all three of you.
Excellent. And there's two questions that have popped up. We'll get to these last two. We'll be right on schedule with them. The first one is tied to marketing. And so this is something that I hold near and dear. I have a marketing background. And the question is, are the AI marketing campaigns more effective than the traditional way? And are you getting responses? And there was another question that was kind of combined with that is what we're seeing is that the larger companies of the world, the Pfizer's, the usual suspects, they're responding less. And I think that's a fair statement to say. And so when you're marketing, what I have found, and my counterparts and those that we talk to every day are finding, is that by using AI, we have now opened up a new world of licensing potential partners and not just the usual suspects. And the reason for that is there are so many smaller and mid-sized companies willing to partner with you or willing to hear you out and not take your idea and reverse engineer it in-house. And so what we've seen in the tech transfer world is more than half of licenses, non-confidential and confidential, are coming from mid to small size companies, which is fascinating to me. But I believe it's because we are now marketing in a very different way and to a very different audience. I think I can remember way back in the day somebody describing that you used to literally put non-confidential summaries in envelopes and send out a stack of them to all the usual suspects. Same thing's happening today, just email form, but you can get much more poignanted to the small and mid-sized companies. I'm rambling a bit, but does anybody else on the panel have any more input on that?
I
I
think,
would
go ahead.
I would just say I would agree with you completely that there is an opportunity or there are opportunities to reach out to companies that you hadn't previously reached out before to. And what I would bucket in that is companies that have recently raised a venture round. So they have money to spend, often have capabilities that they need. From direct experience, reaching out to people. So typically, we use the targeted list from TradeSpace, and then we'll write the tailored message. We have pretty close to a 100% open rate. A click-through rate's lower, but I would say from my past life, the metrics that I'm looking at, look better. So while people are getting more emails, to Joe's point, different players. There's also an alumni feature that we're going to use next. So then it's a warm touch. So I think AI gives you an opportunity to be creative about how you reach out to those people and who you reach out to. And I haven't seen a detrimental effect either.
I'd also add the marketing has just kind of changed. The term marketing in tech transfer has changed. I think marketing in the past was just posted on your local board. And now what we're learning is there's full blown out marketing departments in tech transfer offices, and they are there to, in the larger offices, I should say, and they're there truly to help your inventors to get it out there. All too many times I see inventors under the if I build it, they will come mentality. And not a negative against them. It's just the world they live in, not understanding that you got to go scream it from the rooftops in order for people to know it's even out there. Then once you get past that hurdle, is it a fit? Is it buildable? Is it sellable? Is it scalable? Does it fit a market? So I think what we've done with AI is improved the tech transfer process, the commercialization process by forcing us and allowing us with these tools to market better. With that being said, we're just a few minutes, and I know LES has a closing remark. Are there any final comments from the group? Anything that anyone would like to close out with?
I would
That's fine.
say
I think you've all done a wonderful job, and I'm confident that everybody on has gotten something out of this. And so, with that being said, I'll turn it back over to LES. It has been a pleasure to meet you all. Hopefully, run into you sometime in the future.
Thank you.
Yes, and I'd like to thank Joe, Priya, Alicia, and Jennifer for this very informative presentation today, and remind everyone to please be sure to complete the survey that will pop up on your screen after this webinar. Thank you again for attending, and this concludes today's LES webinar.
Have a wonderful day.